What is up? What is up? What is up, everybody? Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. I'm JC Money. This is my man, Coach Craig. We're here with a couple of our guys. Do a little mock drafting today. Some rookies, 12-team PPR SuperFlex. What's up, Derek? What's up, Mark?
How y'all doing?
Ooh.
How's it going, Mark?
Guys, it's great being here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and Mark kind of introduced Craig and I. He did an awesome contest. It was really interesting rules, and I know he's going to be doing it again this year. You can talk about it at the end of the show if you want to. I know it's awesome show. But yep, primetime mock. You go look him up on Twitter. And
right.
We can get into it right away. So I mean, we're missing our number one guy, Steven. I got to give you a hard time. I know you're out hanging out with your buddy. I know he's got cancer, and you're out there hanging out with him at the hospital. So good on you for that. Good for being a good friend. But dang it for not being here.
Yeah.
But we'll get the draft started and make sure everyone's in here.
Yep. Look like everybody's in here now, I think, pretty much.
Yeah, I think so, except for Dan.
Or they popped in at
Just
one
kidding.
point.
He'll be popping in and out.
Dan's around, so he's in the chat for already. So
I'm about to get this started, y'all.
Mhm.
Y'all excited for this? I mean, do a little mock drafting. I mean, it's a little early, but I mean, never too early in my opinion.
No, it's not too early for rookie stuff. We're a month out from the draft, so in some leagues
Honestly,
do draft.
This is the best time for mock drafts, in my opinion, because really it allows you to get your opinion on the guys before the landing spot comes in. So really, this is right when you need to be starting mock drafting.
Yeah,
I start this time every year. And I don't stop until all the drafts are done.
Yeah, and I mean there is some dynasty leagues out there. They draft rookies before the actual NFL draft too, so it's good practice for people like that too.
And can I say, if you have a league like that, my God, it's just so great to have draft night, like NFL draft night, and you're watching your picks go off. It's a real fun experience if you have one of those leagues.
Mm.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially, like you said, if you draft, rookies beforehand, and you don't know where they're landing at, it's definitely, it's like doing the polar plunge, jumping in and just hoping that you can get out safely.
Yeah.
But I mean, we got so just so you guys know, anybody who's watching, Steven, he was the first guy in, and he's not here. So obviously once the first pick goes through, he'll go on an auto pick, and then we'll just be good. And everyone else is here, so I'm pretty sure it'll be Brees Hall right away, and we'll just let it go through from there. So if there's anything you guys want to talk about, bring up anything you want, man. Any content.
It should go pretty quick. Should go pretty quick once we get started too, but we put 90-second timer just because, like, anybody that's on stream, you have a little bit of time to kind of make your pick and talk about it a little bit if you want to.
Well, you already know what I'm going with, so.
Well, and it's always interesting too watching these mocks before the draft, the NFL draft happens versus how it changes once the draft happens, where just that landing spot, how much it'll change and sway somebody, right? Like you think back to a couple of years ago, Jonathan Taylor was very much everybody's 101 and then went to the Colts second round, whereas Clyde Edwards-Helaire went into Kansas City, and all of a sudden you saw CEH flying off the board at the 101 in a lot of drafts.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or
yeah,
even
it's crazy too. He was even going earlier too, like in regular drafts, in standard drafts. He was going like the first round. I mean, I even fell for that. I mean, definitely a trap, but it happens.
Yeah, that rookie year he ended up getting, I think, up to like 107, 108 is his ADP.
Yes,
and the thing about it is he actually had a good rookie year. It's just the fact that he got up there after Damian Williams opted out, which made it seem like a disappointment because he still had over 1,000 total yards, which was good for any rookie running back, honestly. But people are disappointed because he got overdrafted.
Right. Yeah. So, if you had drafted him where he had originally kind of been going in that 3rd to 4th round type of range, absolutely, like that would have been something else there. Like that would have been a stellar rookie season. You wouldn't have felt that you overdrafted, overpicked there, and would have completely changed the narrative. Not only that year, but I think it also would have changed the narrative that we have on him currently in a lot of cases.
Yeah. So I'm going to take my pick, and I picked the 103 spot on purpose because I think that's where the draft really starts, especially in SuperFlex.
Love it.
And Garrett Wilson's my wide receiver number 1. I think he's the safest, the best wide receiver in the class too. Treylon Burks might have more upside long term, but if he doesn't go in the right situation, it's all over.
Yeah, and I went Malik Willis. I mean, he's going to be, consensus, QB1, but he's somebody that I've kind of been following for a while ever since he left Auburn and went to Liberty. So, I mean, he definitely has his downs, but I mean, he has a lot of upside, and what he could be is definitely something that I'm interested in. Not somebody I want to like talk up a lot because, there's always the super downside that could happen with him, but definitely interesting to see what could happen depending on where he lands. And I've been saying, the Falcons, but obviously a lot of people are saying that's a terrible place. So you pick a good place. I mean, Carolina would be awesome too, but just have a feeling they end up landing in.
It'll be interesting because I think in the real life draft, somebody could actually end up trading up for him too. All signs point to Kenny Pickett going to Carolina at this point in time. Matt Rule tried to recruit him to Temple. He obviously needs somebody that's kind of safe to save his job too. So we'll see if that ends up panning out being the way it works. There's a whole different thing, a lot different things you can debate with that though.
Kenneth Walker. Woo-wee.
Yeah. And I mean,
God, I was really hoping Walker would come to me.
I've seen Walker go as high as 3, and I'm not on board with that by any means. You took Isaiah Spiller at 7. I think if Isaiah Spiller's going 7, 8 in these mock, like in real life drafts, you're going to get a heck of a value by the time you get to real draft season.
Yeah, I think as far as picks go, like you said, right after 102 is like a kind of a cliff here. You want Brees or Malik Willis if you can get them. And then I think the next one comes right after 107. I think Isaiah Spiller is kind of the last guy that I'm really comfortable with having, like, and thinking about projecting having in like my starting roster. Not that you can project any of these people, to really do that, but he's probably the last guy that I really feel comfortable as being like a liquid asset this year in 2022.
And what's up, Matty Daddy? Matty Daddy coming through says JC Money and Coach Craig with Friday Night Yum Yums. He said Derek and Mark TGIF.
I feel like at this point in time too, there's 12 guys I kind of feel like are going to go in the first round. But there's Kenny Pickett going off the board now. I don't typically see 2 quarterbacks go off right away, but if Pickett gets picked 6, he's going to go in the first round.
If we take draft capital, like we don't know what they're going to be drafted as anyway, but let's talk about, can we talk about these quarterbacks and sort of like what we think their draft capital should be if QB desperation wasn't a thing in the league? Because really, I think right now, Malik Willis for me is a guy who I would take in maybe the back half of a first round, and maybe even like if the 5th year option wasn't a thing in the first round of the NFL draft, I would say maybe even a 2nd round pick. And then everybody else kind of falls out from there. I'm happy to take Malik Willis if he gets like top 15 capital. But really, a lot of these guys for me feel like outside the first round guys if there wasn't such desperation for quarterback.
Right.
And even with that too, it just seems like there's prospect fatigue with like Sam Howell, because he's been like around. We've known Sam Howell for 3 years, and like this year wasn't quite as good. But you can argue that actually this was his best year with what he was given around him. So, and
Greg,
NFL teams are a lot higher.
He's my favorite prospect of them all right now, actually.
Yeah, he's mine too, because I think he's probably the best right now, and he has what I would consider the highest ceiling outside of fantasy. Obviously, Malik Willis in fantasy is going to have a higher ceiling just because he has a higher rushing ability, but it's not like Sam Howell is a 0 in the rushing category.
I mean, he was running for his life all year last year, and the one thing I like about him is he's built. He's a large framed individual, and when he gets moving, like he can get those extra yards, and he can sort of truck you and you. I'm not calling him Josh Allen. Don't hear what I'm not saying.
Allen.
He runs like Josh Allen, and he has that ability to take a ball on the run and extend the play that he can make a pass off that run, which really is, I think that's one thing most teams are looking for now is the ability to get out of the pocket and create.
And I'll say this too, if this was 10 years ago, Carson Strong would go in the first round easy. Like there'd be no questions. Yeah. And like people are concerned about his knee, but everything's checked out fine at the combine too. But in terms of like, if I had to start a guy tomorrow at quarterback, I think I'd probably start Carson Strong just because like I know what I'm getting out of him. I don't think his ceiling is as high as some of these other guys, but
this might be a reach. But
I love Sky Moore. I love Sky Moore.
I don't hate it. he's looking like he might get first round capital now too.
So
if not early second.
No. The Packers and the Chiefs at the end of the first round are both very, very high on Sky Moore. There is a good chance that he could go to the Chiefs. I'd like to see, and I was even talking to Smokey the other day. I'm like, I love to see Sky Moore on the Cowboys with him and CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup there. That would be fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So God, here, I just gotta take my dude.
The mock. Go ahead.
I'm just gonna take my dude and Christian Watson. That's a guy that I've been super high on before anybody was high on him, and obviously he's been killing it. I think he's another guy that's gonna go the end of round 1, the beginning of round 2, and if he ends up in a good spot, there's not many guys that are as big as he is and as athletic as he is all time. Like, it just doesn't exist. And like people downplaying, oh, his numbers weren't that good in North Dakota State and stuff. They ran the ball more than any team in the freaking country, and they're like, and they're the Alabama FCS, so they were always winning big in games. So it's not like they were throwing the ball later. He was even in the game at that point.
This is interesting. This
Yeah,
draft is going. I mean, I like the way this draft is going. I mean, I'm not sure if I would like Matt Corral before Sam Howell, but
Matt Corral is the most difficult quarterback for me to judge because the junior year there was terrible decisions trying to force the ball, that gunslinger mentality. This year they put the kitty gloves on him and everything was dink and dunk. It's not a real NFL offense, all this RPO stuff, and it's just like, where is the truth? It's kind of somewhere in the middle. He's been banged up. It doesn't sound like the NFL is as high on Matt Corral, but it really just depends on who you listen to, because some teams supposedly like him and other teams just like really don't have any desire for him. So what do we think about Isaiah Likely being the first tight end off the board there?
I think that the best tight end still on the board, and Trey McBride.
Yeah, so I think Isaiah Likely is probably going to be the third tight end drafted in real life, I would assume at this point in time. McBride and Dulcich, it sounds like both of them have a chance to go 1 in real life, and they'll go 1 and 2 pretty quick in real life, second or third round draft capital there. So I think those two guys will probably go a little bit higher in real life drafts, but obviously Likely does have that athletic ceiling. I think it's probably going to take him a year or two to kind of get there, though.
Yeah, but that's not uncommon for those tight ends to come in and really take 3 years to develop.
Yep.
You know, and a lot of that is you sit there and you watch them have to go through different rooms, right? They have to play in the wide receiver room. They also have to play in the offensive lineman room, and really trying to figure out that and figure out how to bring that thing to play is a tough road to get there. And that's why a lot of times you'll see it take 2 to 3 years for them to really come into their own. Even these guys we see drafted, first round type of draft capital still typically take 2 to 3 years to bring it all together.
From a fantasy perspective. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say he's kind of interesting too, because he could kind of profile as that slot tight end at least early, kind of like in the Evan Ingram type of mold. Obviously, Evan Ingram's not like a name people like to hear, but
come on.
And I like that Zamir White pick. I mean, you know how I am on him.
Who do you guys have as like running back 4, like in mocks, or at least early on right now? Obviously, draft capital is going to change that a lot, probably.
Yeah, right now I'm sitting and kind of waiting on the draft capital. There was a time where I think it's Rachaad White, but really any of those guys in the second round could be the 4th guy off the board. You know, and ultimately, if they slip a couple rounds, it becomes a different story, or whatever their landing spot or the RB depth chart really looks like, because I think it's the most fragile position that you could break yourself into the top, and just seeing what's in front of you. It's really going to come down to landing spot for me for a lot of these guys. For me in the second round, like, I probably would have taken Rachaad White, but even though, again, like I said, I probably wouldn't rank Desmond Ridder even in maybe the 3rd round of this draft. It looks like he's, according to grinding the mocks, he's, if not going at the last pick of the 1st round, he'll be going earlier in the 1st round. So at the 207, you're getting a quarterback. At the very least, you'll probably be able to trade that for You know, especially if he's starting this year, you'll probably be able to trade that for the 207 or better, you know, over the course of the year.
There goes Trey McBride. Auto pick.
There he goes.
I'm not gonna lie, if you'd made him one more pick, that would have made things interesting for me.
In general, as far as tight ends go, I have trouble drafting them in the early rounds, and really, unless they have a really, really impressive profile, and even then, you end up getting burned more often than not. I'm more likely to take, you know, I'd just be more likely to take like a running back, or again, if there's a quarterback that slips in the second round. It's hard with wide receiver too, but I feel like at the very least, if the tight end you're looking for is already slipping to the second round of a fantasy draft, it's likely that you are going to put them on that 3-year trajectory, and that's not good for your fantasy team. That's a roster clogger for me.
Right.
I'll take a swing at Mechie. He got the little injury, but I'm gonna take a swing on him.
Yeah, I'll say the last 3 picks are very interesting, guys. Obviously, Kyren Williams. We'll let you talk a little bit about him, Derek, because he's tanking his stock at this point in time.
No, you're right. He is. He has not had a very good off season, right? But this is one of those that he'll still likely be a day 2 type of guy. You'll see him. I think you'll see him probably go in the third. I think you'll probably see him in
doesn't go in the third.
We'll see. But I think that's probably about where you'll see him go is probably about that third round, mid to late third when it's all said and done. So we've seen that play out, that since I'm projecting him kind of that mid to late third, you usually have enough draft capital behind that he will end up making a little bit of a splash on that. And at the back of a second round for a rookie like that's enough of a draft capital to go ahead and go in on a guy on that one. So even though his off-season workouts haven't necessarily been not even necessarily, they just haven't been good. He hasn't been showing up great in all of these different workouts there. I think you'll still see him get enough draft capital to be good. He has enough of the resume out there as well from his college production for a team to give him a chance. And at that point, last pick in the second round, I'll go ahead and take that shot, because I think you'll still probably see him get somewhere in the neighborhood of, 50, maybe 60 carries when it's all said and done, 500 yards somewhere in, it's actually probably way off there, but you'll probably see him 400 or 500 yards when it's all said and done. So I'll get deeper into some of those things, but
let me ask you this. If he goes where Chris Evans went last year, where are you drafting him in rookie drafts? That's the draft capital I expect in real life is 6th round.
Right. Like it could be where you see him going there, but if he
somebody really loves him.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, again, like Chris Evans is one that he ends up in a different situation there, where he's behind a certified starter and, decent backup there as well, where he's coming in and being that 3rd or 4th string guy there at that point, right? Like he's obviously getting pushed down the boards, but if he's getting drafted to a situation where you can see a path ahead for him to the point where he's where he's he can fight for that backup role at that point, I think it's worth it, just from the standpoint if he gets a pop and he can make some plays, which I think he can do. But we've seen him make enough on-field plays there throughout his college career that he could get a shot going that route.
I think an interesting spot for him would be Tennessee, if he can kind of get that third down back role that everybody's been trying to get behind Derrick Henry, but nobody seems to be able to really control. Then after him went Justin Ross too, which obviously he has his own concerns coming off of injury, with the neck and everything. And then he had the injury this year. He had his pro day, and he had like bottom 5 percentile, like all time 10-yard split on his 40-yard dash. So not very good at all. Obviously, he only had a couple weeks to train after coming off his foot ankle thing. So there's a little bit of a factor there. I think there's a lot of guys that are interesting here that went, especially this running back group this year. I think Brian Robinson is a guy that we're going to be surprised by his real life draft capital, because it seems like NFL teams are higher on him. Tyler Beatty's an interesting one. I think if you switched him and Kyren Williams around, I wouldn't be surprised by the time we get to doing the real rookie drafts, because I think his draft capital would be a little bit better. Kind of profiles as a similar type of back, a little bit undersized, can do the pass catching role, and he led the SEC in rushing yards this year too. So
I was really hoping that Brian Robinson would get to me at 307. I thought that it was coming. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. But I'll take Bam Knight injuries. Honestly, third round is like running back dart throw like season. Like you just got, they're all an injury away, some of them. And again, right landing spot now is you're gonna, you'll find a few running backs pop up. Khalil Herbert pops up. Players like that pop up all the time. Kenny Gainwell. Although he kind of went in the second round last year. I think people go overhyped him a little bit, but
so when it comes to Bam, I think Bam is like one of the running backs that probably hurt his stock the most this year. And it wasn't necessarily his fault. It was kind of how the team deployed him. And then he just didn't test quite as athletically at the combine as I expected. So a little bit disappointed with him, but he could end up being a guy that pays off, in the third, fourth round or rookie drafts if he lands in the right spot and gets an opportunity someday.
And at this point, again, in the draft, these are not guys who were even necessarily projecting to be on our team like next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So really at the, take your shots, sometimes you see just you just see you like what you like on film. That's enough of a reason to take this guy in the third round. You like their, you like their landing spot. Sure. Take him in the third round. That's fine. It's really, I think, in a lot of ways, it's dealer's choice. I personally, strategically, am going running back there because I think it's the fastest path to production for any roster, and probably the easiest thing to let go if it doesn't work out. But yeah, I honestly, as far as third round goes, like it's always get your guy, but really, it's just like if you have a hunch on a person, go for him. I felt good about. Again, I would have been really happy for Brian Robinson at the time. I feel good about Zonovan Knight there.
Yeah.
Knight.
Sorry, Jim. Jim says besides not getting Mechie in round 3, the draft has so far worked out well. Batty was second option.
Yep.
And here, I think I might reach a little bit. Somebody that I guess I just liked in college.
Yeah, I think Tyler Algier falling to 310 is really interesting to me because I think he's one of the running backs that can actually profile as a true 3-down running back at the NFL level. I think there's going to be a team that's pretty high on him. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets day 2 draft capital, but I expect it to be day 3 after the combine, only running 4.6 there. But that dude was yoked at the combine. Wademeyer is really I was just going to say Wademeyer is pretty interesting too. Now that he ran a 5.03 at his pro day. But you go ahead, Mark.
I lost it already. I'm sorry.
was it regarding Tyler Algier or what?
Oh yeah, no, he was the other guy I was looking at there with Bam, and I probably again it's sometimes it's just the day, right, that you're picking, but I do agree. I think that he won't get the draft capital, but that's the thing I want to talk about. Now we're seeing that a lot more players with day 3 capital as far as running backs. I mean, they were always getting it, but now I think the league is sort of attuning to, we're not going to draft the early first round running back anymore. And at the worst, it'll be a late first round. So it's kind of shifting a lot of players back. And now that day 2 running back group still ends up performing pretty strong throughout the year. So yeah, if they get day 2 capital, it's still good. And again, a profile like Tyler Algier still has that profile to be a 3-down running back. And again, at this time of the draft, that's all you can really hope for, is sort of just a path you could see coming to fruition.
Yeah. And if I'm being honest, there's only like 4 guys in this draft class that I see as like true 3-down backs. And it's Breece Hall, Isaiah Spiller, Tyler Algier, and Rachaad White. And those are the only 3. Like, could Kenneth Walker get there one day if his pass catching and everything else gets better? Yes. Could some of these other guys get there one day? But those are the 4 as of right now. And then I took Ty Chandler there. Ty Chandler, for me, is kind of the biggest sleeper running back in this class. Reminds me a lot of Khalil Herbert last year.
I will say the reason that so Tyler Algier, you're right, can be a 3-down back. But I also think, for me, the reason I took Bam Knight there is I think that he's more likely that he could be a player that could become like your pass catching back and be Tyler Algier may never get there. I feel like Bam Knight within the first year could be somebody's third down back. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And again, so like that's sort of where you really don't know how it's going to work out. Sometimes you just gotta let the chips fall where they may. It's hard to tell in those situations, though, like which is actually going to play out. Because again, the upside's better for Algier. You're absolutely right. But I think the path to production might be there for Ben.
Yeah, he could get his foot in the door a little bit easier, but with Algier, it's like if he gets the opportunity and just takes it and runs with it, he has a starting job more easily, I would say, if that makes sense.
I agree. We're lockstep on that. For me, I feel like it's hard for all of that to work out sometimes. And maybe I'm just saying, like, this is a guy that I know will be productive enough that I can get a second round pick maybe, by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dan says, thanks, guys.
Yeah. Like I said, I really like Bam coming into the year. It just kind of like a lot of it wasn't his fault. NC State just kept like he was okay at the beginning of the year, and then they just did like, oh, we're not going to use you right anymore.
Well, that's the thing is like there's going to be plenty of players who get used wrong in the NFL too. And the problem is we don't know who those players are going to be. Some players that were used wrong in college are now going to be used right. We really don't know how it shakes out.
Yep. Educated guesses, man. I will say one of the names that did get taken here is Jalen Tolbert out of South Alabama. I know some people are pretty high on Jalen Tolbert. I am not one of them, so I'd be kind of interested in hearing your guys' thoughts. If you have any.
Nope.
I don't have a lot of thoughts on it. He's not somebody that I actually think I watched in my rookie profiling. Mm-hmm. But as far as capital goes, it doesn't look like he's going to be going high. And if he does, I'll definitely have to look again. But again, fourth round for me, I'm not as interested in a wide receiver as I am running backs and maybe the occasional quarterback and tight end.
Yeah, fourth round. Yeah, fourth round to me is just like I just grab somebody that I like watching in college that has potential. Like Hassan Haskins is just somebody that won me a lot of money, playing DFS.
There you go.
With. Yeah. So it's just like me.
That's all right. I got the guy to fall to me all the way at the last end here with old Jeremy Ruckert here. Kind of like that pick there at the very end.
Yeah, I don't mind that, especially a tight end in the fourth round, especially if somebody like him, he has the upside. He didn't show a lot at Ohio State just because of everybody else he had to play with. It's hard to demand a target share as a tight end when you have 3 first-round wide receivers playing alongside you.
Absolutely. But he's got an elite catch radius. He's a big body, runs a decent route, and can box out. Like I see him being a legit red zone threat there. And really where you're going to see him play at is going to be kind of a tight end 2 coming into this league, right? And really where I'm projecting him going is going to be to the New York Giants when it's all said and done. So kind of that next step beyond the Evan Engram experiment there. Let him kind of come in, grow a little bit. And I think you could see him be very good in about 2 to 3 years. Just like we were kind of given that timetable of what it takes for a tight end to be.
Yeah. And he's a guy that can kind of come in and block day one too. There's not a lot of guys that I don't have question marks about blocking for tight ends in this class. He's one of them. Another guy that's really popped up for me is Daniel Bellinger. He popped up a lot at the combine out of San Diego State. He ran a 4.63 there, tested out, very athletic, which was the question marks about him because they're like, this dude's the best blocking tight end in the class. But is he athletic enough? And then he goes in there and just kills it. So I think he's a guy that's probably going to get 5th round draft capital. If you're going if you go 5 rounds in a rookie draft, I'm taking a shot on him like the 5th round. But if he's a free agent, I'm grabbing him right away afterwards because I think he has one of those profiles. Yes, he wasn't used a ton in college, but he still had 50 catches over the past 2 years on a team that didn't throw the ball a ton. So he's a guy that's kind of interesting. Pierre Strong there at the 410 is somebody I like a lot. I often refer to Pierre Strong as discount Kenneth Walker because they are both 2 down running backs. They're both pretty quick, both tested very similarly. Obviously, he played at the FCS level, but at 410 there, I really like that one quite a bit. I think Khalil Shakir fell pretty far in this draft too at 411. I think he's going to go earlier in most drafts. Keontae Ingram and Sincere McCormack, they're kind of there together. Some people really like Keontae Ingram. Some people really like Sincere McCormack. McCormack is a guy that I'm not drafting at all, like unless he just gets like way better draft capital, lands in like a perfect spot or something, because really productive in college, but played against weak competition. I had very big questions about his athleticism. Goes in the combine, runs a 4.6, doesn't look that good testing out athletically. I wasn't super surprised there. I think some people kind of overrate how good his vision is and his speed initially, obviously playing against that lesser competition. So unless it really ends up in a good spot, I don't see myself drafting him at all. Do you want to go team by team at all, or any picks that stood out to you guys?
Yeah, I want to say, let's go. I want to go through your team. I want to say, tell me why you drafted your team. Let's hear about why you drafted it.
Mine?
Yep.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson is my wide receiver 1 and the 103. Like for me, at 103, it's Garrett Wilson or Isaiah Spiller. But obviously, Spiller's been falling down some here too. If I had 2-3, I might trade up and try to get Spiller, at like 107, 108, wherever he kind of ends up going. Just depends on who you're drafting with, kind of who there. Christian Watson, somebody I've been high on for a year and a half, and everybody else is kind of catching on now. So it's kind of where you have to take him. I think if Sky Moore is there, I take Sky Moore ahead of Christian Watson though. But Christian Watson probably has the higher end upside. But I feel Sky Moore's safer. Carson Strong at 3-3 is a potential starting quarterback in the 3rd round. I actually ended up liking Carson Strong a lot more than I thought I would initially. And he's got everything you look for except the athleticism. So if he ends up on a team with a very good offensive line, he could be very productive. Ty Chandler is just a running back that I do like quite a bit in the 4th round and reminds me a lot of Khalil Herbert last year, like I already said. So.
Yeah, I was about halfway through the 3rd round, I started looking for Strong, and I'm like, who drafted him? I'm like, I know who drafted him, and I look back and I'm like, yep, it's Craig. I knew it was Craig.
But I mean, there's a decent amount of people that are reasonably high on him. For whatever reason, the NFL draft media just kind of shoos him away like he doesn't exist for whatever reason. I don't know if it's because like some teams would be like, hush, hush, keep quiet about this guy, or something else,
They watch his running ability.
They're just worried about the knee issue, which obviously he had surgery on his knee and he came back 2 months early and before he was supposed to last year, and then played the whole year. So yeah, he wasn't athletic to start with, but then you had that on top of it. So
what was that play that we were watching? You're like, this is why they wouldn't draft him. It's just like his little
he tried to run and he just like fell over.
His line was like -3. It was like -3 rushing yards every game. Like you couldn't even bet 0 rushing yards against him. No. You had to bet negative yards.
Well,
that's awesome.
Well, and then in college football, sacks and obviously kneel downs always count against you, but sacks in college football do too. But his offensive line wasn't that great, and he was able to kind of escape some pressure even despite not being very mobile. So you had the pocket presence there for a guy that's not as mobile too. But I like to see, if he goes to let's say he goes to the Colts and has a good offensive line that sits behind Matt Ryan for a year or two, I think he's a guy that could do pretty well in that system.
How many starting spots do we think are really available left now? So we know Pittsburgh, Carolina,
Atlanta.
Atlanta, I would say is still pretty much open, right?
Seattle's still open.
Seattle's still open. Is that kind of it here? Because you'd have to get for a guy like Carson Strong, I could see a guy like Desmond Ridder if he goes to New Orleans taking over Jameis Winston. Like I could see something like that happen. Or like Sam Howell, if he gets drafted at the end of the 1st round to Detroit, I could see him being the starter. But I think that line is kind of there, and that's like I don't know if Carson Strong has that ability to crack the starting line from the jump here.
I don't think any of these guys should start initially.
Well, that's a whole different story, Craig. I don't know if any of these guys should start.
I don't think most of them will.
I'm just saying, realistically, I think you could at least justify maybe Willis, Pickett, Corral, and Howell, and I guess Ridder. But I guess if he's the 6th guy off the board, and assuming that those teams that are still in need of a quarterback took those players, it's hard for me to see Carson starting now.
Yeah, but are any of those guys going to be able to compete in training camp and come out the box and knock a guy like Trubisky, Sam Darnold, Drew Lock, any of these incumbents that will be there that have the NFL experience there. I don't know that any of these guys are going to be able to really push the guys that are the apparent starters going into the draft to really compete day one.
You're absolutely right, Derek, and I agree with you. But what I'm saying is, we also know that the NFL is impatient and they're really bad at developing quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, 4 games in, I could easily see Desmond Ridder being the starter. I could easily see Howell being the starter. I don't know, again, if he's the 6th guy off the board. If I see a team that has that sort of ability, I mean, maybe it's just harder for me, I suppose. But all said and done, I still would take him in the 3rd round where you did.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's SuperFlex is the 3rd round, so you're just taking that chance on that guy. But there's going to be some NFL teams that will have Carson Strong as their 2nd quarterback off the board. And even Maurice Jones-Drew, latest mock draft, he had him going 32 to the Lions. So it's not completely out of the question that he gets early 2nd round draft capital. I wouldn't be shocked. Like, you could mix up these quarterbacks pretty much any way, 1 through 6, how it turns out in real life, and I probably wouldn't be shocked at any of them. And
I would say 1 is probably solid, and then 2 through 5 could be anything.
I mean, it really just depends, because like you can make a case that Willis goes first, you can make a case that Pickett goes first at this time. But I think only so many teams. There's only a handful of teams that really like Kenny Pickett, I think, too, and there's a lot that are really concerned about him. There's a very few handful of teams, it seems like, that like Matt Corral. Not a lot. I'd say a good handful of teams that like Sam Howell, a good handful of teams that like Desmond Ridder, and a select few that like Carson Strong at this point in time. But I think he's just not that exciting prospect because he's the guy that's not mobile. But out of all these guys, the 6 guys last year, he was the only one that was able to call audibles and stuff at the line of scrimmage and read defenses and all that stuff. And he wasn't the only guy that could get through reads. I'm not going to go that far, but he had more control of the offense than a lot of guys.
The problem I have with Kenny Pickett is we would never be talking about him if he didn't have an extra COVID year and he was a super senior. On top of it, he has the most starts of any of these guys, one of the latest breakout ages. He has, I think, as many fumbles as he has starts. And so for me, and again, and that doesn't help. That doesn't help the tiny hand size story that's going around. You know. So for me, like, yes, there is a world where the first quarterback that comes off the board is 6, and Carolina takes Pickett, and that's like the only world I see Kenny Pickett being the first drafted. But I also see probably just almost as equally possible as like the Lions take Malik at 2.
I think I'd rather see Howell go to something like that.
Or somebody trade up to Panthers. 5 to the Giants to take Malik at 2, or to take Malik at 5.
And I think there's also a situation too. If Carolina does not take Pickett at 6, I think somebody trades up to 7 to take Malik Willis. I think that's a realistic possibility. So if the Panthers go offensive line for whatever reason, which is a very good case if they don't go quarterback, then somebody's going to trade up for 7.
That's actually a great thought, Craig, because I feel like if 6 doesn't happen, you have to trade up to 7. You have to. Which is why I think there's probably a trade before the draft that we're not expecting. That way, I would say eventually somebody's gonna feel a certain way about a quarterback enough to be like, okay, let's trade up, or feel like, okay,
come on, Vikings.
We cannot. I feel like it still might happen. I don't think it should happen. I think it still might happen that if somebody gets in their head that Detroit does technically need a quarterback, that there's still the number 1 is in play. I still think it's in play.
And in theory, the number 2 is also in play. Like Detroit could play up that they love Malik Willis enough, and then just get a whole bunch of ammunition from that pick too. I think that's
if you remember the San Francisco draft, the Mitch Trubisky draft, where San Francisco were they 2 or 3?
2, I think.
Right? They were 2, and the Bears were 3, and the Bears traded from 3 to 2 to get Mitch Trubisky and gave up a whole catch of picks, which is a horrible idea in hindsight, but it's still that stuff still happens.
I'm so glad the Bears did not end up with Patrick Mahomes.
They could have had him or Watson too, and that's the thing. Like, say what you want about Watson now, it's not very good, but you had two better quarterbacks. And like, I think Trubisky still has untapped potential. Matt Nagy's just a terrible head coach. We could talk about that at length, probably for 25 minutes. I could probably talk about that for 2 hours if I really wanted to.
Yeah.
I
Dedicate a whole show
on one podcast before. So,
the Matt Nagy sucks show.
Yep. So I think it's going to be very interesting.
Everyone gets their data, their references.
We'll even bring on special guest Matt Nagy. Oh god,
just angry Bears fans, like just.
Oh
yeah. We'll take calls. You take calls.
Yeah, I feel bad for Bears fans.
So we can put a bow on this. You know what, Mark? Tell them about your show. Your show is dope. I mean, your little challenge was amazing.
Yeah, so let me talk about it a little, because Craig and JC Money, they were both on fantasy football. It's a fantasy football and DFS reality competition that I put together over on the Primetime Fantasy Network on YouTube. You can check it out. Just a small single guy. I'm doing it all by myself here, kind of putting it together. But check me out. I mean, like we've got a lot of cool stuff. Every single week, you're fighting for immunity to keep yourself out of elimination. You're playing your weekly gauntlet. We have crazy twists like Monday night players you can't plan because we're going to eliminate you on Monday night. You know, we have a lot of cool stuff. And in general, check out the network because I'm trying to build upon sort of different things. I'm looking to put together a contract league. Like a house league, and guys, if you're interested in joining up, I'd be happy to have you. We're trying to do some cool stuff out there. Just as I started last year doing primetime mock. I'll be putting that up again, in the next few weeks. It's a different draft with people all over the fantasy industry every week, and it's a ton of fun. So feel free to come out and check me out on primetime mock on Twitter. I'm always posting, a DFS contest or a mock draft out there. So. Yeah, come out and check me out.
Glad to see you still rocking that logo, brother. Thing is dope.
Hey, that's right. And I thank you for it, man. And I'm looking at your graphic. I need to get you on retainer, my friend. Like, seriously.
Yeah, I like doing it. We've been doing it for a little while. And, some of our other shows, I just do all the graphics. And Craig just talks. Because Craig's the man. Craig is the man. What about you, Derek? What you got going on?
Oh, I'm part of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast, and you can find us Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, just about every social at Good Old Boys FF. One of the best places to find our content is over on the YouTube as well. Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast YouTube channel. One of the best ways to support us there as well. We're across every podcast network that you can find out there as well. And right now, it's really starting to get prepped and ready for the draft. And one of the other places where I know the old Coach Craig from is Stacks. And for those of you that haven't had a chance to check out Stacks, it's in the App Store, it's in the Play Store, or you can go to stacksapp.io and download the app there. And it's a great place to come on and debate just about any sports topic you want to talk about.
Yeah, Coach is all over Stacks.
Because it's amazing.
Yeah, and I respond to about everything unless it's like hockey or boxing or something. I don't know as much about that stuff. I just slack off somewhere, but
you can always count on Craig to jump into DFS competition. It doesn't matter if you're playing, the Grand Prix in Monaco. Like he's still betting on it. So you throw him a DFS contest, Craig's playing in it. So
yeah, I played the golf this week, but apparently Justin Thomas and Xander both lost. So
Xander screwed me too, Craig. He screwed me too.
And then I think out of the 6 guys, I only had Fitzpatrick go through. I'm like, what is this?
The WGC with the tournament. I mean, it's weird. Like playing March. It's playing March Madness and DFS at the same time. So I think really maybe next year we look for just a lot more people to join that contest because it really plays to a GPP. You can't play a 20-person cash game at the WGC match play.
And I think next year we'll end up getting like a league. We'll do like everyone draft a team or something like that, or everyone picks from different tiers of players, and then that's the team that you have all year, and then basically you just add up points.
Oh, you could do what you could do is you could just. I mean, I have plenty of ideas. We'll talk about this off the air. We could definitely come up with something.
Yeah, I mean, any collabs we want to do, anything like that.
I've had the same kind of idea, Jason. I've had the same kind of idea.
It's so fun. Yeah, it's so fun. Like I feel like golf is it's an untapped kind of area that not a lot of people really get into. Like you have to really be into golf. Like most people that are like that, but I'm like, no, golf is like fun. It's super fun to even bet on because it's like the craziest things happen. Like Michael Jordan said,
there's like a firewall because baseball is the incumbent, but baseball, especially for DFS, is so boring. So I really think I think golf DFS is kind of where it's at this point.
Yeah, I like
baseball DFS is more luck based, honestly, because it's all home run. It's all event driven essentially, which is home runs.
League like roto leagues, like baseball leagues are fun. Like a lot, like if you have a full like a baseball fantasy baseball league, that's fun. But DFS is not. Like DFS isn't fun because ultimately you've got to be there at noon, checking all your lineups every single day. It's not fun. Like it's too much.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go back to the draft real quick. 1 second, too. Is there anybody you're surprised that wasn't drafted or somebody you would have your eye on after this draft is over? Let's go there.
I don't know if we can even pull that up.
Well, I mean, we can kind of see the names too. So
the one player I have left in my queue is Jelani Woods. Does that help?
Yeah, that's a good name there. That's obviously super athletic tight end. Probably a guy that's going to take a little bit of time to develop, but he has a really high upside, and I know a lot of people are really high on him too.
And generally, I mean, that's why he's not drafted here for me. But he's, I mean, like if it came down to it, and all my running backs were gone, I would have taken Woods. Again, great athletic profile, and I don't like waiting on tight end. Really, I'll just find some scrub off the waiver wire instead, and assume that he'll probably get a few more points over the course of the year anyway. But I still like the profile, and stranger things have happened.
Calvin Austin was a guy too that I was a little surprised nobody took a flyer on there, right? Like super. While he's not necessarily a big wide receiver, he's only 5'9", 162 pounds. He's that little water bug type of wide receiver out there, but absolutely just a burner. And we've seen teams go out and spend high draft capital just because a guy torches a 40 and at a 4.32, that is in the blazing fast speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Craig?
Austin's a good one there too. Sometimes we don't see those guys pay off for fantasy as much though, and there is a little bit of concern based on his height being like 5'7". We have not seen a guy finish as a wide receiver 2 that was 5 foot or shorter than 5'8". Let's put it that way.
Right. I just remember everybody all crazy about Rondell Moore last year. Right. Right about right about similar height.
But I think
no, go ahead.
When you talk about Calvin Austin, I think Calvin Austin, like we talked about Tutu Atwell win second round in real life last year. I think Calvin Austin's a better wide receiver than he is, more complete at least at this point in time. And he can do a little bit more. Like he's not just going to get murdered when somebody presses him or like lays a finger on him. He doesn't fall over like Tutu does.
One more thing I think worth discussing is beyond who didn't make this draft board is do we even want the picks that late in our draft? Because if we're talking in earnest, I could probably say I could probably check out and trade all my picks after 107 if I wanted to, and feel pretty good about it.
That's actually one of my favorite strategies to do is just start taking round 2, 3, 4, just ship them off and get future capital, because then you always see that guy that as you start heading into draft season gets just super crazy about wanting draft capital, and you're able just to continually keep that deal going, and you've just got the war chest that you can convert to more assets.
That's right. And I will say, if you have like a pick after 107 right now, like 107 to I think like what 204 is probably, I think like 204 is kind of where it starts to cut off for me. Or maybe like 205, 206. But anyway, once you get to sort of that range, Like those picks 1-7 to 204, 205, those are picks that I would want to trade them, but I would still wait until the draft day to trade them because they're going to be way more valuable. Anything after that, just trade it now. Get out of there. But yeah, I would say like those mid to late, I would just wait until the draft. Obviously, hear offers for them, and if somebody gives you like a haul, take it. But like, wait till the draft, and you'll probably. I mean, like, I'm thinking that you can easily get a nice 23 future, not in the sharper leagues, but you'll get a nice future pick out of it.
Yeah.
And David asks, who's your number one tight end? Who would be the first tight end? Yeah,
McBride. Not all that interested in drafting a tight end. McBride again. I could take him in the second round and a second round. That'd be fine for me. But in general, I would avoid tight ends in my rookie draft.
Yeah, fourth round is where where they start to play at for me, and that's where I'll take the shot.
Yeah, Again, I don't hate McBride there. What is it, 211? 211's fine.
Yeah.
For a guy like McBride, Kyle Pitts, like obviously he's if you get first round capital, you should probably draft him in the top 2 rounds, especially if he's going top 5. But if they're getting third, fourth round capital, there is no guarantee of anything. There's not even much promise of anything in the first year.
Right.
No, and I think, God, who is it? I was just looking at him like, who the heck else didn't get drafted that I was thinking of in my head? So I had 2 players that I'll mention too that these guys might rise a little bit come draft time. Kevin Harris out of South Carolina. He led the SEC in rushing 2 years ago, had surgery, and then he came back after missing a couple games at the beginning of the year. He had 600 yards rushing, a little over that. And he tested really well at the combine at the things that he did do, the broad jump and the vertical. And this is a guy that's a big boy too. So he's a 2-round bruiser back anyways, but he tested really well in burst categories in the vertical and the broad jump. So that's kind of interesting there. We'll see what his 40 time looks like and everything, but I wouldn't be surprised if his draft capital gets decent come draft time, but there could be some concerns coming off of his surgery that he did. It was like a back or a neck that he had going into last year. And then the other guy that I like quite a bit that might some NFL team I think is going to like pretty decent is Jalen Naylor out of Michigan State. He looked really good at the combine. He tested pretty decently. The production is not always there, but he had good games at Michigan State. But, that especially this year, that was a run-first team too. So it's kind of hard to be a standout wide receiver there when you got that all going on as well.
Craig's the man. Craig's the man. So what, Craig? You want to tell him where to find you at?
Yeah, so you can find me at Coach Craig Sport on Twitter, at Coach Craig Sports on YouTube, patreon.com/Coach Craig Sport, where I'm putting all together all my draft stuff. So working through wide receivers as we speak. And then you can obviously find me on the Stacks app as well at Coach Craig Sports over there. You can find Derek there too.
Come on in there and chat it up, any of these topics with us, and we'll gladly debate you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find me everywhere at JC Money Design, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, SuperDraft, Sleeper, anything like that. But just remember, on Sunday, we're going to be doing our SuperDraft Sunday. NASCAR, baby. So we talk a little NASCAR, get a little stuff in. We got our guy, Andrew Yu, that comes on. We might have somebody else that comes on too. But, yeah, keep it logged into the channel. Make sure you guys are subscribed. Make sure you guys are following everybody that's on here because these guys know their shit and they clearly have been, rocking it all season long, So make sure you're following everybody here. Appreciate everyone coming in. Let's see what kind of comments we got in here before we get out of here. 3 of them. David's the man, dude. David's always in here. He's one of our biggest supporters.
Yeah. I'm drafting defense.
Just draft defense. Yeah, so we will be doing some IDP stuff. Obviously, we'll be getting into that too, and eventually we might do a little bit of Debbie in here a little bit too, because we'd like to do maybe some leagues like that.
So
that's always interesting.
So on Sleeper, are you able to just make it where you can only draft defensive players for rookie draft?
I think so. I'll have to look at it a little bit. That would be fun too.
Yeah, because we could mess around with some of that one of these days too.
As someone who's had to mess around with every function on Sleeper over the past year, yes, you can do that. That's no problem.
Yeah. Because I think
And
that'd
you
be
can reach out to them
interesting.
on Twitter too. They're pretty responsive on Twitter, and they have changed some stuff. Just you just kind of have to reach out and bug them, and they will change some settings. And if you actually go directly on Sleeper and you go to their like help area or whatever it is, like their contact area, they actually do respond pretty quick on there too. Like I've had problems and they fix things. So if you have suggestions, I know they're always willing to grow because they have been growing. Devy stuff is something I'd hope they get into, but you can do that on here too. You just have to you just have placeholders players. So you just have older players that aren't playing, and you basically can type notes in on there. I mean, I saw that they had it in there before, and I think that just the commissioner can do it, but I saw it in there where you can just do notes. So then just throw a note under that player.
As far as Devy's concerned, I believe Fantrax allows full-on college fantasy football drafting, so you can do it there.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on. You're always welcome on. Craig and I love having guests on, and you guys are always friends here. I mean, Mark, you're a great friend, and Derek, you're a new friend. So good meeting you.
It was a pleasure being on. Thank you for having me.
If you're not going to treat me like company, I'm not going to act like company.
You don't gotta act like company, bro. Your family. That's all it is. This is what this community is. Building a family.
My heart, man.
All right, y'all. Let's get out of here. Peace out.
Good.